was with my sister. Mother had procedure done Friday, and sister brought me a book that we can use for our next series. If this one's too boring for you, the next one will be the Beverly Hillbillies Bible Study. This is volume 2.
Really?
And the first lesson is how to be humble posture. I guess you can use anything as an example to teach. Well, come on through. The title of today's lesson is Here He Comes. I'm going to be using the map or this drawing here for most of the lesson. David, do you mind handing or you busy? We'll get some of this, please. This map is not to scale. I'll make sure you understand that. The simple map doesn't take up as much as what that shows, but I wanted that to be the focal point of our lesson actually today and next Sunday when we discuss the Passion Week of Christ. But as a reminder, we talked last week about why Israel is so important, and that we know that it is the place that God chose to give to His chosen people. This was a land He picked, and He was going. His plan is still to use it for the second coming of Christ, for bringing salvation to the whole world. And that's what Triumphal Entry is actually celebrating, Jesus coming into Jerusalem so that He can offer His life as a Passover lamb. All right, so God had claimed this land, and we read in 2 Chronicles 6, verse 6 says, "But now I have chosen Jerusalem as the place for my name to be honored, and I have chosen David to be king over my people Israel." And in Psalm 132, verse 13, it says, "For the Lord has chosen Jerusalem, He has desired it for His home." So Israel is important. I mean, when we ask the question, why is it so important? It is very important. The land of Israel, to me, is the most important piece of land or real estate on the entire planet. It is the place where salvation came for mankind, where Jesus offered His life up for the sins of mankind. So what is more important, as far as a piece of property, than where our lives are spared from going to hell, and we are able to be reconciled back to God. Now, Jerusalem is a very, very old city. It dates back before the days of Abraham. If you remember reading in Genesis when Abraham went and rescued Lot, after other kings had come and attacked Sodom, that he met the king of Salem, Melchizedek. That is Jerusalem. Salem is Jerusalem. Remember hearing the term, maybe, or reading the term Jebusites in the Bible? It mentions all these ites. Jebusites is one of the ites. Jebusites were from Jerusalem. That is where their homeland city is. Don't strain too hard, Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm analyzing your math.
Get you a headache to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jerusalem goes back, from here over 4,000 years, how long it's been in existence as a city or as a town. It was actually established, and I don't know if you can see through this, I'll move in just a minute. Gihon Spring, just outside of what was known as the city of David, is Gihon Spring. And that's on your map. If you look, I do have a picture of this on the pages I gave you. Gihon Spring was the place that the city of Jerusalem was actually, where it actually began, because of the water supply there. Now, all of the Gospels carry the story of the entry or the triumphal entry. Not all of the Gospels carry everything that's what Jesus did. Some carry some parts of it, some others, but all of the 4 Gospels carry the story of His triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Now, where it starts at, I'm going to use Luke as my text today to read from. I'm going to read this to set the stage. This is AD 29, okay? So Jesus was killed. Most theologians believe he was crucified at AD 30, not 33, because he wasn't born on 0 year. Okay. I believe he was born 27, as the chart behind me shows. So I'm going to read from chapter 9 of Luke and set the stage for his journey into Jerusalem. And we'll begin reading at verse 21, then we'll skip to 28, then to 43 and 51, just to tie it all together. Luke 9, just to give a little backdrop, just before verse 21, is when Jesus had asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" He first asked, "Who do people say that I am?" Then he asked, "Who do you say that I am?" And then that's when Peter makes his confession that you are the Messiah, the Son of God. So he says right after that, Jesus warned his disciples not to tell anyone who he was. The Son of Man must suffer many terrible things, he said. He will be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He will be killed, but on the third day he will be raised from the dead. Verse 28. About 8 days later, Jesus took Peter, John, and James up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was transformed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly, 2 men, who are they? Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Jesus. They were glorious to see, and they were speaking, this is the important part, they were speaking about his exodus from the world, which was about to be fulfilled in Jerusalem. I mean, I don't know if you ever thought too much about what happened at the Mount of Transfiguration. This is what happened. Jesus was being encouraged to hang in there. And the human side of him was dealing with what lay before him as he was going to be headed to Jerusalem. And Moses and Elijah come to encourage him and to talk about what was going to happen imminently. Okay? So they were there to encourage and talk to him about his exodus from this world. Verse 43, while everyone was marveling at everything he was doing, Jesus said to his disciples, "Listen to me and remember what I say. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies." But they didn't know what he meant. Its significance was hidden from them, so they couldn't understand it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. Remember, they were not looking for a Messiah that could die. They were looking for the Messiah to deliver them. Verse 51, this is where the journey begins. As the time drew near for him to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely, whatever you say that, set out for Jerusalem. He is in Capernaum at this time. He sent messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival, but the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. When James and John saw this, they said to Jesus, "Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them, so they went on to another village. Okay, so I'm going to pull away from my notes for a little bit and just talk about this journey that he took. So, when he is in Capernaum, Capernaum is up here. Just use your imagination. Capernaum is right up here. The Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is right here, if you can imagine. Capernaum is on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. So when that time comes, it's like when the call is now it's time to go towards Jerusalem for the final time. Jesus leaves Capernaum. Now, Capernaum distance from Capernaum to Jerusalem is approximately 90 miles. They think the roads would have been at that time, so the trails. But as the scripture said, when they get to Samaria, which is right here, the Samaritans would not let Jesus and his group enter. And it says that Jesus had sent messengers or people had to prepare reservations. That's not what the word reservations, but to make room for them because he has a group traveling with him. It's not just him and his disciples. Remember, there were women that traveled to help support and take care of their needs, cooking and whatever else they were needing in their journey, washing their clothes probably. Not that that's what women do now. I'm not trying to be sexist about that. But, so they traveled with them and supported them financially. So when they get to Samaria, it says that the Samaritans refused to let Jesus and his group enter into that area because they were going to Jerusalem. A little explanation about that is that The Samaritans, if you don't know this, Samaritans were a mixed breed. They were not full Jews. They were mixed with other Gentile people. They were not full-blooded Jews. And the Samaritans believed that they were to worship on Mount Gerizim. Not Jerusalem, but Gerizim was where they were supposed to worship. If you remember the story when Jesus talked to the lady at the well, the Samaritan lady at the well, and she said, well, we believe we're supposed to worship on the mountain. You believe you're supposed to worship in Jerusalem. So the Samaritans knew that Jesus was going to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Passover. Or there was actually another feast in between there, and I'll hopefully cover that. So they did not want, they hated the Jews, especially because of this issue. Jerusalem to them wasn't a holy place. They refused for Jesus and them to enter Jerusalem. So then, instead of coming down this 90-mile trek that would have been down this road here to get to Jerusalem, Jesus has to make a detour and come over and come down and around to get to the eastern side of the Temple Mount, the eastern side of Jerusalem. This added approximately 35 miles. So the journey was roughly 125 miles, give or take, from the time he left Capernaum, walking to get to Jerusalem. That's, you just imagine that, traveling that far, and all the difficulties and frustrations there would be with that. But that was the journey he was taking as he was going to make his final entry. And there's another entry into Jerusalem, but it's not the triumphal entry that takes place. Okay, so while he's traveling down and he leaves out of Samaria or away, not going through Samaria, he comes down, and in that, from Luke 9 to chapter 19 of Luke, is all dealing with the journey. It's dealing with the time from he left Capernaum till the time that he gets to Jerusalem. So that is the 10 chapters that are dedicated to that journey. The last 5 chapters deal with his entry up to his ascension back to his Father, the chapter of the book of Luke. So he goes through Jericho. Jericho is right on the river. I think it's on your map there. Jericho is, remember, if you're in your daily reading in the one-year Bible, we just read about the Israelites conquering Jericho. It was the first city that the Israelites conquered on the western side of the Jordan River. So he comes through there. That is where we have the story of Zacchaeus, where it says Zacchaeus was a little man, and a wee little man was he climbed up in the sycamore tree. The Lord he wanted to see. And so this is where, in that journey, is where the story of Zacchaeus takes place. It's also when the 10 lepers are healed. It's also when Bartimaeus, the blind man, was healed. Jesus speaks a lot of parables to those who are traveling with him during this time. So he is journeying now from the around fall of AD 29 is when he leaves Capernaum, according to Jewish history. So he's on this journey, and when he gets to Bethany, which is, who lived in Bethany?
Lazarus.
Lazarus? Yeah. Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they were some of Jesus' closest friends, and he visited them several times on several occasions. He goes to Bethany. It's believed he visited with them, of course, when he got to Bethany. And while he is there, he gets anointed. May not have been at that exact first visit, but it's when the woman, Mary, actually comes and anoints him with an expensive perfume. Happened in Bethany. And so, while during this time of him leaving in AD 29, in around December of 29, then he goes over to a place called Perea, P-E-R-E-A, which is back over here, in this area. And in Perea is where John began his baptismal services. And Jesus goes over to Perea, and there he does several things, ministers, lives there for a while. But while at Perea, he gets word that Lazarus is sick or died. Okay. So he is over here, if you remember the story, obviously, that he waits a couple of days before he goes, and he tells his disciples, now it's time to go. And they said, well, if he's asleep, why do we want to bother him? He'll get well if he's asleep. Jesus explains then that he is already dead. And he tells, I'm glad that we were not there, because now you will see my glory revealed and the glory of the Father revealed. So the miracle of raising Lazarus, I'm not going to teach that lesson again. I've taught it last year, I guess, at this time. But the miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead is the key. Remember this. It is the key to Jesus being crucified. Now, just let that set in there. This is not just a miracle where he raised someone from the dead. It is the key, the very thing that pushes the religious leaders to want to kill him. And they want to kill Lazarus as well, because Lazarus is proof of the miracle that Jesus had raised a man that had been dead for 4 days, in the grave for 4 days. So he goes back to Bethany, and there's where he heals Lazarus. But the religious leaders then just like put a bounty on his head. And they want him taken out, because they said now all the people are going to follow him. In other words, they're going to not follow us. We're going to lose our position as their leaders, so to speak. And they're following this guy who says he's the Messiah. So they put out, like a bounty on his head, wanted dead or alive, so to speak, for Jesus. So because of that, Jesus retreats to an area that's called Ephraim, which is just north of Jerusalem, just somewhere up in here. Still using your imagination glasses. So he goes to Ephraim, which is just a little bit north of Jerusalem, and stays there. He shuts his public ministry down during this period of time. This is in John. You read that in John. And so during that time, he is no longer going out. He's staying, preparing for his final entry into Jerusalem. And then he leaves Ephraim. He comes back down and goes over to Bethany. Now this road here might curve more like this. I really don't know. But he leaves Ephraim, comes around. The only way to get in to the Temple Mount area is from the east side, and it's a gate called the Eastern Gate. There's another name for that. Anybody know what the other name for the Eastern Gate is? The what? No, actually that's being confused. This is actually the beautiful gate right here. But that's what most people think of being. The beautiful gate is where Peter and John healed the guy that was lame. Golden Gate. That's it. Or we have the Golden Gate Bridge. They have the Golden Gate entrance. Now, what's interesting about that Eastern Gate, that it is sealed up. You no longer can get through the Eastern Gate. The Muslims sealed it up. David, look for the book. The Muslims sealed it up in 1541 while they were ruling over Israel, Jerusalem, all that area. They sealed it up for the reason, this is interesting to understand this, the Muslims knew the Jewish belief that the Messiah would return or come, the Messiah would come through the Eastern Gate. That was a Jewish belief and prophecy, and still is for Orthodox Jews, that he will enter through the Eastern Gate. So they sealed it up, so he couldn't enter. Not only did they do that, they made this a cemetery, Muslim cemetery, because they believed, because Jewish belief was that if a priest went near dead bodies, he would be unclean and could not enter into the Temple Mount. Okay? It disqualified him. So they began burying Muslims at the Eastern Gate to keep the Jews, or to keep the Messiah out if he was really going to come. Now, they also look at that as Elijah also being the pre-runner, one that come before Jesus, to keep him out as well. Now, speaking of cemeteries, right here in this area in the Mount of Olives is a Jewish cemetery. It's the largest Jewish cemetery there is in that area. And all of the graves, for the most part, I can't verify, I didn't go and look at them, but all the graves there are set so that the feet are facing east, or west. Feet are facing west. They're facing the Eastern Gate. The head is to the east, and their feet is to the west. Okay? The reason for that is they believe that when the Messiah does, they don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They believe that when the Messiah does come, he's going to go through that Eastern Gate, and when he comes down to the Mount of Olives, remember he's going to come down and set his feet on the Mount of Olives? That when he sets his feet on the Mount of Olives, all of the dead will rise up and walk directly into the Eastern Gate and follow the Messiah. That's their belief. So it's just interesting how they really do believe that the Messiah, or they did, I don't know how many today still believe that that they were looking for the Messiah still to come and looking for him to go through the eastern gate. Now, the Garden of Gethsemane is in this proximity of the Mount of Olives. It starts going down. The terrain starts going down here to this Kidron Valley. So I put this in here because this is called the Temple Mount for a reason. This area here is elevated above the two valleys. You have this, now I've never heard of this valley till I've looked up the mount. You have this Tyropeon or whatever valley that runs through here, and then the Kidron Valley here, and this Temple Mount where now is the Muslim Dome of the Rock sits, the beautiful gold dome up there, sits here on the Temple Mount now. So it is the highest place. Now this is the city of David. This is where David, when he conquered Jerusalem, this is where his house was, where his palace was, and was called the city of David. See if there's anything else regarding to this.
The eastern gate, you can see that as you're driving around that area. It's gold. Everything else is that stone and hard stone, and that stands out, and there's nothing around it.
Well, speaking of that does bring up something I was going to bring up. So when Jesus then gets to Bethany, he sends two of his disciples to Bethphage. Bethany is approximately 2 miles from Jerusalem, just to give you an idea of the distance here. 2 miles roughly from Jerusalem. And Bethphage is closer. It's like 1.5 miles from Jerusalem. Okay? Fairly close. He sends two of his disciples. What does he send them there for?
Yeah,
Get a donkey. He says, you'll find a colt of a donkey tied up, and ask the man there, tell him the master has need for him. And so they go and they do find the donkey and they bring him back to Jesus, and Jesus then begins to ride on the donkey as he heads in towards the Temple Mount. This is the only entrance to get to the Temple Mount from the east side. That's why this path is why this path is the one Jesus took. The Watergate, there is a Watergate other than dealing with Nixon. The Watergate down here, it was another entrance, but it was a lower level down here. You had to go upstairs and all to get into the Temple Mount area. So this is the direction that Jesus took. So when he gets up, he's riding the donkey, and the people now have come to Passover, come to Jerusalem for Passover. There's many people there. Jesus has healed Lazarus here, and the word has spread as people have come in for Passover. The word, did you hear about Jesus, this man Jesus? That this man raised a man who had been dead for 4 days and raised him from the grave. And the word spreads, and there, those who are gathered at Jerusalem will say, you think he's going to come? You think he'll be here at Passover? They begin talking it up. And then they hear word that there is this man coming to Jerusalem riding on the colt of a donkey. Well, they know the history. They know their prophecy. Not history, but prophecy. And Zephaniah, I believe it is, or Zechariah, says that, your king will come riding on the colt of a donkey. I believe that's Zechariah 9:9. That they know this prophecy. And they have heard this man raise somebody, something that's never been done before, raise somebody that's been dead for 4 days, and they begin to go out to meet him, and they begin, laying clothes in the path, and they began taking palm branches, which is why we call today Palm Sunday. This was a symbolism of recognizing someone as a king. They were waving palm branches and proclaiming him to be the son of David, the king of Israel. It's what they were proclaiming him to be because they had heard about Lazarus' miracle, and they believed that Jesus had to be the one that they were to be looking for. If you remember our lesson a few weeks ago, we said the reason the Jews were looking at that specific time because they knew what the 70 weeks pinpointed that it would be during their lifetime when the Messiah would show up. So they knew it would be in a window there of their lifetime when the Messiah was to come. You also remember I spoke about these dates. I know you can't see them now, but that there are some theologians who believe that this date, when you use Daniel's dates and all, you come up with the exact day of Jesus' triumphal entry. They use some different decree dates for the decree because there are several dates or several decrees issued. But they believe it's the exact day of the triumphal entry. That brings up Psalms 118. It's a very familiar passage. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We take that to be something that we should say every day, and we can because this is the day the Lord has made, and we do and should rejoice in this day. But that was a messianic psalm. That was a prophetic psalm about the coming Messiah. And what it was saying, this is the day that the Lord has made.
Amen.
And we will rejoice in it. It says, because the King is coming. It says, Hosanna, save us. The word Hosanna means save us. This is the day, that's what that scripture refers to, is this day when Jesus entered in to through the eastern gate to go to the Temple Mount. Now, as you know, when he gets there, the people are still just proclaiming him to be the king, recognizing him as their king. But the first thing he does is he goes over here to the court of the Gentiles and throws over the money changers' tables. This had to be their first sign. Wait a minute. He goes to the church and does something. We're looking for a political savior, not someone who goes to the church to disrupt the Passover, because these people were selling items for Passover. Those who did not have their lambs when they came, or those who didn't have their pigeons or turtle doves or their whatever they needed for the sacrificing of the Passover, they sold those items there and were making a big profit on it. That's the first place Jesus goes to. Remember, he's there as the Passover lamb. He's there to offer himself as the final Passover lamb.